We haven't had winters like that in many years. So what's happening is that the pine beetle is spreading catastrophically like a plague through the northern parts of our temperate forests. And the big fear now is the last great intact forest on the planet is a boreal forest. And if the pine beetle actually extends its reign into the boreal, this will be, I think, catastrophic. So that's the most stunning visual observation of what's going on. There are so many other areas where you don't have the bias of human interpretation of what's going on. There have been very, very careful documents of when the appearance of migratory birds in the spring and when they leave, the last bird to leave in the fall. And there it's crystal clear that birds are now migrating to the Arctic through Canada an average of more than 2 weeks before they have in the last 100 years. And they're leaving the Arctic at least 2 to 3 weeks later than they normally did. So there's, you know, nature is telling us in ways that I think are incontrovertible. Now, you know, the other piece of evidence that I think you have to be an absolute paid stooge of the fossil fuel industry if you don't agree, is to look at the record of carbon dioxide in the ice sheet in Antarctica. So every year as it snows, the snow captures bubbles of air, and as they're compressed into a thin layer, what you get is an annual record then of snowfall that is like the rings of a tree. So the deeper you drill, the older that record is. And you can take micropipettes and take these samples or these bubbles of air and analyze the carbon dioxide content. And there it's just absolutely striking. I mean, you see over 400,000 years, carbon dioxide wiggles up and down, and then suddenly in the last 20 years, you see it curve up. And for a while, it's not above background, and then it's now going straight up. It's above anything that we've seen in the last 400,000 years. So you know, unless you're very, very silly or you have preconceived notions that will not change, the evidence is very, very striking.
My own view, David, is that we're at a particular point in time's history where we either decide to work together to solve these issues in a world which is going from 6.5 billion people up to 9 billion people, and we find a way to work in harmony with each other, or we actually do what we've always done, so sort of business as usual takes us to conflict as usual. What's your view of the future?
Well, I think that if you hit the wall, that is, I've always used the metaphor of a car, that I feel that we're in a car heading at a brick wall at 100 miles an hour, and everybody in the car is arguing about where they want to sit. It doesn't matter who's driving. Someone's got to say, for God's sake, put the brakes on and turn the wheel. A few of us are saying that, but we're locked in the trunk. Nobody listens to us. So we're faced with this dilemma that, yes, if we hit the wall, we'll have no choice. We've got to pick up the pieces. It's a hell of a lot harder to pick up the pieces than to put the brakes on and start turning the wheel. I have always believed that humans had this capacity to look ahead, to see where dangers lie and where opportunities are, and to make a choice. But there are such powerful forces to carry on with business as usual. And there is a deliberate attempt on the part of the automobile sector, the fossil fuel sector, to create doubt in the public's mind. And the fossil fuel sector has poured millions of dollars into a campaign supporting a few skeptics that are saying, no, the evidence isn't in, climate change isn't happening, humans aren't responsible. And what that does is it creates confusion in the public's mind. They go, oh, well, wait a minute now, I just saw a scientist that said it's not a problem. So to the public, it's, if those damn scientists haven't settled it, well, why should I worry about it? And I must say that the fossil fuel industry has been very, very successful. We, and I consider myself a part of the media, have just been duped into balanced journalism. You know, well, if we're going to get someone here representing 99% of the climatologists saying global warming is happening, well, we have to balance that. It's not right to just give it as if it's a known fact. Put a dissident on, even though a dissident may be one of a handful of 10 or 15 people. We balance the thousands of scientists here with the one from the skeptics. And to the public, well, scientists haven't settled it. It's still a debate. So I think the terrible aspect now is that we don't have people coming together, as you say, all working for the same objective. because apparently profit and greed trump the future for our children and grandchildren.
David, with all of the issues, all of the books, you still seem to be optimistic. You still seem to have passion. You still seem to have hope. This is a complex world. What is the message that you would give to our future makers?
One has no right to say it's too late. A lot of my environmental friends are saying, look, Suzuki, if you look at the facts and the curves, we're not going to make it. I mean, we're going to hit walls. And I think if you feel that it is hopeless, then my answer is always, then shut the bloody hell up and get out of here. Because you've given up, fine, that's your decision, but get out of here. There's no point in telling people there's nothing that can be done. So I'm not interested in people that say it's too late. Now, having said that, am I an optimist? No, I'm not an optimist or a pessimist. Optimists believe that good things are going to happen. Pessimists believe that bad things are going to happen. I just have hope. That's the critical thing. I'm inspired by a guy named Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela sat in prison in the prime of his life. He knew any moment he could get out of jail, all he had to do was renounce violence and quit the ANC, and they would have let him out of jail. So here he is in the prime of his life, rotting in that prison. And he must have had moments after 10 years, 15, 20 years when he said, what the hell are you doing, Nelson? I mean, you're a fool. You could be in bed with your wife and getting on with life. And he never did. He could never have known that in his lifetime apartheid would be dead and he would be Prime Minister or President of South Africa. So if Nelson Mandela could hang in there all of those years, I don't think anyone's got the right to say it's too late and nothing can be done. Having said that, the curves and the way we're going are taking us into very, very perilous territory. When you lose 50 to 55,000 species a year, and that's what Klaus Topfer of UNEP says we're losing, that is a tearing at the web of biodiversity with consequences we can't even begin to understand. We can't stop the fact that we've added more than 30% more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. The experiment's already in motion. There's nothing we can do about that, and the reverberations of what we've already done to the atmosphere are going to reverberate over hundreds of years. So we have no idea what's already been done. But scientists are now saying we can't recall the greenhouse gases we've added to the atmosphere, but we must try to limit our additions so that we don't rise above 2%, 2 degrees in the coming century. That's going to take a heroic effort to do that. But if we rise above 2 degrees, then all hell breaks loose, and we just don't know whether we'll have the resilience then for the biosphere to take that and be livable for human beings. People say, well, what about, I'm afraid for the future of the planet. I don't care for the future of the planet at all. The planet will do very well without us. It got along for billions of years without human beings. The planet will be here after we go. I don't fear for life on the planet. I believe life is incredibly resilient. When you can find life living at 100 degrees Celsius, when you can find life living in highly radioactive pools in sulfuric acid, life is very, very resilient. We, as predators at the very top of the food chain, however, are unbelievably vulnerable because we depend on that pyramid of all of the diversity of life below us. And I would say if there is a species at risk, it's humanity. Even though we're the most numerous mammal on Earth, we are at a very perilous moment. And so the question now, I think, is not will life continue to exist, but is what are we talking about the near future for our great-grandchildren? What kind of a planet are we leaving them? And I think it's a very perilous one. Are we going to avoid hitting the wall? I don't think so.
David Suzuki from WWF Australia, thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Thanks a lot.